This is So In Flow, a podcast to help you activate the power of creative flow in every part of your life, business, and of course, creative process to make your creative dreams reality. This podcast is produced in collaboration with Seahorse Bookstore, the independent bookstore with a mission to awaken the imagination. Order your books and stream your audiobooks through Seahorse. Hey, this is Molly Murray. Welcome to So In Flow. Hey there, I'm your host, Molly Murray. I am a creative flow coach, a rapid transformational therapy practitioner, and an energy healer. And I own Seahorse Bookstore, an independent bookstore on the southwest coast of Scotland, with my husband, Gordon Murray. I help creative people heal the rejection wound and bring creative flow into every area of their lives to become thriving artists. I believe that the block is the way, and the issues that are holding us back also hold the treasures we need to become who we need to be to reach our goals. In this episode, we'll be exploring the magic of creative flow in your home with Nalasa Cutler. Hello, So In Flow. I am so excited to speak to you today and so excited to introduce Nalasa Cutler, home therapist, intuitive designer, and advocate for inner harmony. Nalasa has agreed to come on today and tell us about her creative journey. Nalasa, I would love to introduce you and just to ask you to tell us a little bit about who you are.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here today for sure. Who am I? I do many things. I'm a world traveler, wanderer. I love color, spaces, and really creating environments where people love to be in. And I look at design and space as a really holistic, intuitive process that really allows people to shine.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And I'd love to set the tone for our session today. So I picked a tarot card just as we were chatting before we started this. I wanted to show it to you. It's the Muse of Materials. And this is such a beautiful card. It just shows creative confirmation, creative fulfillment. Everything coming together, abundance, earth energy, material success, the journey of creating prosperity, being able to provide for those you love, the joy of a life well lived, grounding into the earth, gratitude, comfort, wealth, health, and happiness. Now, this card is kind of Nalasa in a nutshell, because Nalasa is all about creating beautiful spaces of comfort that really welcome in abundance. It makes the abundance and the energy flow. So I'd love to ask you just a little more about your work, Nalasa, and how you do that. What exactly you do.
Yeah, so I work really personally with people. One of my main premises, especially in one of my main premises is you have an energy field, and the space that we live in is an extension of that energy field. And so examining where we live, how we're constantly in an interaction with that space, whether consciously or unconsciously. Whether, from our possessions, from the land that we live in outside ourselves, like the property, the space, all of this is coming in, and oftentimes we'll be somewhat removed from it. And it will also, some of our items will be relaying grief, holding traumas, holding joys, so many different levels of things. And as we start to move or rearrange or even just examine these things, you can really create a space that is much more fuller, that really speaks to where you're wanting to be in life. I also, hold on, let me silence my phone so it doesn't keep popping up with the notifications. Yeah, sorry, lost train of thought. I also work with the energetics of space. And so when disharmony happens, within a space, little fragments of things get trapped in the walls and the furniture, and doing both like somewhat ritual, but really intentionality, and seeing where a person is, and what they're wanting to create there, makes it so I can clear those spaces, kind of calibrate that energy, align it to a smooth, um, what is it? Like essentially a space of spaciousness and neutrality, so you can actually feel your own energy system, as opposed to having the influences or the interference of outside um, noise.
Wow. This is so beautiful, so magical, and such a different field. I feel like you are a pioneer. Could you tell us a bit about your journey to come into this field and how you created this, how you really create your work and how you created your vocation, I suppose, maybe found is a better word.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a lifelong journey. I feel like this is my soul work. Like I've I don't know if people are into cardology at all, but I'm a seven of clubs in that. And so it's really the sevens are one of the most spiritual cards on the deck. And it's really the merging of material and spirituality. And I actually feel like my work very much combines those two things. It's like, how do you create the balance between the spiritual and the material objects, the space, the world that we're living in. Um, and I, so to how it came about me, I've always been into interior design. I've loved spaces. I have moved a lot. I lived in 13 houses by the time I was 13. Um, and I kind of started creating, like, I always loved creating space. I loved getting to a new place, establishing a home, looking at all this, and also realizing as we moved, like some things would change. And then also the internal mindset of how trauma can also stay with you. My mom was a bit of a hoarder. And from a trauma response hoarder. And so I really learned like the psychological effects of how we hold on to possessions. So I have a strong, like, kind of trauma-induced clutter background to some degree. And then also my love of adventure, traveling, seeing the world, really experiencing the full breadth of just the human experience. So Tantra, the idea of having multiple sensations, really working with elements, and having that both almost like the duality of life, the pain and struggles, as well as the beauty and wholeness. And I really infuse all of that into my work. So how I meet people, both in the energy spaces and not. Yeah, I feel like that was a little bit of a tangent. um, I've always wanted, I have thought about it. I almost studied interior design, or I did study interior design. I almost went to school for that originally. And I'd always felt too materialistic. I really view it as like a tool for greater wholeness and for growth. And so, in how I've discovered my work is like really like, how do you bring the humanity? How do you bring the person, human-centered design in like the fullest way into interiors, into space, and really into how people connect most deeply with themselves, but also with, I use the word home a lot, but I mean home as really a feeling more than a place, like a feeling of safety, of support, of love, of feeling that groundedness, that support structure that allows you to express yourself most fully in the world. Yeah.
Wow, no, that's just wow. This is so magical. There's so many beautiful thoughts here and so many things I would like to follow, but One word is really sticking out to me, the pain in this creativity and how that brought you here. And I would just love to ask a little more about this journey because I feel like creativity is kind of intrinsically tied to pain because creativity is just so healing. There are so many proven benefits as to how healing it is. And I feel that people who have been through trauma, been through hard things, just naturally find their life by following their creativity. So I would love to ask you more just about this journey, and you can also go into maybe how pain shows up in a house and what people can do about that. Just
Ooh, yeah. I mean, so how pain shows up in a house. Um, I mean, ghosts are the first thing that kind of pop into my mind of like things being hurt or things get so everything is energy, right? So we're all made up of energy, and little energy fragments can get essentially like trapped in walls, trapped in stone, trapped in all of these different things. Um and even like places that argue or experience like intensity, like when you walk into a room and you can feel like the visceral heaviness of someone that's just argued there's like a tension in the air, and that tension that like built, like, we are energetic beings, we're energetic systems, and essentially you can just think about like when we're like angry or upset, we just like splatter this other places, like we just like throw it around. It's or like trying to get rid of it. And sometimes like I just view it, yeah, like splattering paint is kind of like the picture that I have right now. And so if you're living in a place that has fragments of like these splatter paints from like past, like either death that happens there or trauma or just like arguments or unhappy marriages, there's been stories where it's like, houses, there was this one house and everyone that lived there ended up getting divorced. And then these couple went in there, and as soon as they went in, they started fighting, they started doing this. And so all of these like little fragments, like it's sometimes not the people, it is like the environment that they're in and it feeling disharmonious. It's almost like and it's like sometimes below consciousness, it's just like there's just a tension, and doing a dowsing, doing an energy clearing can actually get rid of that. It's ceremonial, it's ritualistic, it allows the energy to be cleared and ultimately making a more cohesive and whole world. I actually was talking to someone the other day who was talking about how they had like a benevolent ghost that lives in their house, and she was like, oh, like I don't really need to clear it, like it's fine. And this is some weird tangent, but I was like, actually, it's not really about you being bothered by it or not. It's like the ghost wants to be freed. Like it literally wants to be returned to its thing. Like it's not there under circumstance. It's almost like you get your space cleared, not necessarily for you, but for the betterment of the world.
wow. Okay. And you went there. That was, of course, once you mentioned ghosts, I couldn't turn away from that. It perked up my ears. I mean, today is Halloween.
It is
And I don't
Halloween.
think our listeners would forgive me if I didn't ask more about the ghosts and what else you have come across. And yeah, we'd love some cool stories.
Ghost stories. I mean, there's entities and beings that like live places. Oftentimes, like to spot it, it's like sometimes it's like ghosts can make themselves very physical, and other times it's just feeling a place being drabbed or dark. I actually there was this house that I visited a while ago. I think we were in Pennsylvania and visited this old man. And I think sometimes clutter or darkness or stuckness, like all of that is kind of, not to say that you have that and there's a ghost, but there's, whether it's an entity or something, something is causing a blockage or something is blocked there. And what I was talking about for this house is, I don't know if necessarily it was haunted, but there was this house and it was this old person's house. He was an artist and you could tell that he had lived there for a very long time. It was like the height of parties, probably in like the 70s. Um, and he had like gigantic, like he had tons and tons of paintings in this old barn and everything was kind of falling apart. And there was just and it like looked dilapidated. It was probably somewhat, you could maybe say it was haunted. There was like definitely like it needed a clearing really badly, both like physical purge, remake, whatever. And I was walking through with my friends, and what was really prevalent to me as we're walking through this kind of like tons of stuff and dilapidated building is just how much life had been lived there, how much joy, how many people, how much like partying and just like expansion of consciousness had been there, 20 years ago. And so there's all these little fragments of spaces. And like, is it habitable now? No. That energy could get moved, it could get cleared up, it could get changed. But really what struck me more than anything is just the beauty and the fullness that is present within a space. And so I think when we're dealing with house clearing, with all of these things, it's not like it's spooky or something else, but it's really honoring the history, the past, what has happened there, and then allowing for completion for then what is like the continued chain of evolution or event, or like who is the next person that is hosting that property, that building, and allowing that to make peace with everything else, to allow that to take full residence.
Wow. Excuse me. That is absolutely beautiful. I love that. Honoring the presence, honoring the fullness. And it's such a different view on what we different usually have of shades of the past. Um, I would just love to hear about some, like, the creative journey is so magical. I would love to hear about some magical synchronicities that you have come across on your creative journey.
um oh my gosh, so many magical synchronicities. I'm in the process of writing a book about magical synchronicities and travel actually right now. um but I wanted to just touch upon, the creative journey and kind of the struggle of things, and what you mentioned in your last question, which was, I think creatives, like, we have this, like, creativity comes out of turmoil or comes out of both like pain and sorrow. I feel like any strong emotion, like we just also had a lunar eclipse a couple days ago over the weekend. And I was like pulled by just like the tidal, like the king tides. We're staying right next to the beach right now, and you probably also experienced it where you were, where you have extra high tides, extra low tides, and thinking about the movement of emotion, and the swelling, and like stripping away of tides, emotions, and this fluctuation. And I think with trauma and pain, as well as like, happiness, I feel like so much creativity, like if you think about love songs that are created, so much of it is a matter of like either being highly in love or being like devastated from like heartbreak. And the same like swelling of the ocean, like these extremes make creative things happen. Like it's like what it is, the outlet that allows us for expression. And in creative flow, there was that whole idea of like manifestation, which somewhat goes to intuition and synchronicities, I think, as well. Those are all kind of wrapped together. Is, manifestation is like emotion and made physical, like emotion or thought made physical. And I think that is just like intimately tied to the creative endeavor, whether that's through an art form, through a speech, through a song, through um manifesting an experience of some sort. One of the stories that is going to be in my book, as far as like manifestation or synchronicities, is I ended up manifesting a free hot air balloon ride in Turkey, where it's just like, you have this idea. It's like, what are all the different steps to make that happen? And seeing those synchronicities of, getting the idea, wanting it to happen, taking action, making certain actions, or meeting certain people to allow that to take form.
Oh, goodness, chills. I love this. It's exactly how I feel about creativity, because this is actually when you create, you are actually making visions reality. And that's exactly what manifestation is. And so it's just that, again, it's like the muse of materials, that card. I feel like she is you. It's bringing this spiritual and physical together. It's a beautiful reality. Um, I would love to ask you, Nalasa, could you tell us about a time you met failure or rejection, um, maybe a huge challenge in your creative career, and how you overcame it? Like, what did this rejection teach you?
Um, that's interesting. So I'm sure there's other ones, but like I think rejection personally is actually something that's from like it's like one of my like internal wounds. It's actually a really
Mhm.
big thing from like a mother wound and rejection, and the and feelings of like not belonging, or like feeling like you're gonna be essentially left to die, or drawn away. um I like my biggest rejection that I think has actually propelled me wasn't in a personal relationship. I ended up breaking up with this person from a sequence of events, which actually, which is hilarious. I actually made the decision on Halloween, and that it was no more. It's actually really funny that it is the anniversary of this time period of yeah, I was actually engaged, and then shortly after our engagement, it ended up becoming really clear to me that like this isn't the person that I am to be with, for a plethora of different reasons that I'm not going to go into. But making that decision to actually go to like choose myself over like loving myself more than loving him, and like going into the unknown of what does that look like, and experiencing so much pain and hurt, to then come out on the other side of like standing like firm in a decision of like what I'm gonna do. um and and that was intimately rooted in like the feeling of like it's almost like him rejecting me but then not. And as far as linking that to like creativity, or um like in a business sense, I think it kind of goes deeper into, for me it goes deeper into like I was allowing myself to be blocked somewhat creativity. He wasn't into woo stuff. He was like he was an engineer. He was very practical, very material in a lot of things. And it's not until I guess like shortly after and experiencing like this deep trauma, like he essentially stimulated uh deep healing for me of like feeling so connected to this person, not understanding that you're not necessarily seeing with your eyes open, or like allowing your own energy to be freely creatively expressed. um and like both like the decision of that, which was 4 years ago today, I believe, and then the turmoil that followed, allowing myself to feel like what does it look like to actually be creative, to allow my gifts, my intuition, all of these things to flow more fully. um which led to, me doing the work that I'm doing now. I felt like there was like, I was like teetering it with it before, but if it's trapped from like you not allowing it or not being in a supportive environment, I feel like the people we surround ourselves with, like even though he was very entrepreneurial, very all of these other things, like even these slight negative things will have an impact on how you show up, what you feel like is doable, and like what you allow yourself to express.
Oh, goodness. And once again, Nalasa, I have so many chills. Um, I just want to acknowledge that and thank you so much for sharing so deeply and being so honest and raw. And now I have to say, I had almost that same experience. And I think it's very common with the rejection wound. I know it's a wound you receive early on, you grow up with. Often it's generational and it's just embedded in you. But then it's sparked by some great pain or trauma like that. I also broke up with a guy we were very close to getting engaged. He was a math guy, and it was just very similar in all these details. But I was so crushed and so devastated. It triggered every wound in me. And I felt like I had been rejected, it was just shattered, or like the universe was rejecting me. It was just everything fell down. But from that complete devastation, like everything has built up, because I think when you let everything go, that's when the new life can take place and you can find out exactly who you really are and where you want to be in life.
Yeah, I think I remember having this image of just feeling like, my world like shattering, right? Like I had this whole world and idea of my life created with him. And I remember at one point, after that whole happened, I fell into a month-long journey of just like really feeling that pain and allowing it to bubble up. And actually I view the whole situation really much as a gift now, because not if you think about it in a karmic sense, like not everyone is here to like trigger like the healing that you need to have happen, right? And so like I was close enough with him like that enabled me to like really experience this healing ultimately, which included feeling a lot of pain on the other end. But the image I had is like my life shattering and then being like, okay, like I created this life, I created the scenario. Now I get to create like my new little world, my new snow globe with like pink sparkles in it, as opposed to like, you get I think it gives you the opportunity to reframe or move on or realize that you have the capacity to choose to create what you want to create in this world, a lot from having those setbacks or realizing. And I think part of that is also just maintaining. I'm very optimistic. I feel like you're very optimistic too, ultimately.
Mhm.
But like it's falling back on like what is your essence? What is that feeling of somewhat hope, but just, how do you move forward and build the community that actually serves you of where you're wanting to go?
Oh, I love that. That's absolutely it. If you have advice for people who are going through challenges or rejection right now, what would it be? What would you like to tell your younger self who is going through that?
Oh, so with energy work, well, so two parts. First, preamble. With energy work, I think it's really hard to sometimes see outside of your viewpoint and the energy field you're in. The act of like switching your focus, switching where your bubble is actually relatively easy, but like the mind is conditioned to not want to go. Um, like I know sometimes like in the biggest thing that helped me when I was essentially, going through this feeling of like extreme abandonment, extreme hurt, all of this is really this idea of like you will be okay, and that it's allowing the energy to move without letting it like hold you. So it's, I guess, somewhat of a uh, spiritual teaching, but it's like allowing emotions to move and feeling like ultimately like all of the hurt that I had is rooted in love. Like all the hurt that I was experiencing was rooted in love of loss, love of this, love of that, and really falling back into I view it as like a sense of like beauty. Like when I think of beauty, which I feel like is one of my main motivating main values in the world, is like how to instill beauty, but beauty with like a capital B, of really feeling the fullness of life. The When bad things happen, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that it's like a part of the whole pendulum of like whether it's joy or sadness, this fullness of experience, this fullness of capacity of feeling, whether it's really high or really low, is all a matter of like being human. And like that like that large area is what brings fullness, is what brings growth, a surrender, beauty, all of these different things. I feel like I'm not having the best time articulating it. Like there's a sense of just like vastness of the human experience that is experienced with all these. And as much as you're in the process feeling it, trying to keep that layer of perspective, I feel like is super helpful for grounding you into something that is beyond simply the feeling, the circumstance, your physical body, and really feeling the beauty, the wholeness, the impermanence of this in the grand scheme of time allows you to let the energy move and move on to the next thing when that next thing is ready to come.
Oh, I absolutely love that. I agree so much. It actually reminds me of a poem I wrote years ago about that experience and others. It was just about that pain of rejection, how first I wrote a story just as I was trying to heal that was in the middle of that pain and rejection. And I got this image of the Grand Canyon and just how shattered the earth was. And I felt like that earth. I felt like the world just completely torn apart and devastated. And I was like, this is never going to be the same. And then a few years later, after I had healed a bit and was rebuilding my life, I was able to stand back and look at it and see how it had shaped me. And so I wrote this poem about looking at the Grand Canyon and seeing that perspective about how beautiful it was, even though it's a landscape of devastation and trauma. When you have that perspective and can stand back, you can see the true beauty and the depth just that this gives you. It's really exquisite and beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time.
Yeah, that reminds me just like the image of like when your heart breaks, it also breaks open, so like wounds are where the love can also like enter or
Mhm.
get let out. And so it's almost like when something breaks and scars, it's actually because it's growing, and putting it back together, it has more mass, more fullness than before, ultimately more capacity.
That's right. And now I'm gonna sound really ignorant. I don't remember whether it's Rumi or Leonard Cohen. I think both, but the wound is where the light enters in. I
Yeah.
know there's a poem about it, but I don't remember if Rumi wrote it first or if Leonard Cohen did. But anyhow, you know what I'm talking about. It's a good
Yeah.
one. um, I would love to ask you, Nalasa, how do you find creative flow? How do you work best?
Um, that's a good question. I
And oh,
Yeah.
sorry, I could give it a connection to the last one, particularly after going through something really hard in life or just after going through these bumps in the road, how do you find your way back to creativity and into creative flow?
So I love naps. Naps are like one of my superpowers, actually. I think with creative flow, it's ultimately about following your passion and your joy. And just, I think often in the world, with rules and roles and structure, we're made to not have creative flow. Like it's very like, how do you stay creative within a box? Which actually I really love structure, so that's not the best analogy necessarily. I think with how I work with home design, it's like being able to know like um, what is a wall that's permanent that you can then apply pressure and work with. Like that is how I think of structure in creativity. It's like knowing what is permanent and then what is movable within that. And like without that structure, it's hard to then actually create something. Being in a completely blank room or completely nothing is really hard. And so like creativity in my work, it's like going back to like what is the intention, what is the driving force behind this thing, and then you slowly start to build. Shape becomes form out of energy, whether that's ritual, intention, purpose, etc. For creative flow just in my workday, like often I'll like move my body. I'll off in the past, especially when I was in college, like I would having to write a paper, and I would just clean the whole house, allow for movement, allow for my mind to just be in different places. I think creative flow is also allowing yourself to even go for a walk and just being really present with like what is there right now. I think touching upon synchronicities, manifestation, intention, etc., like all of these I think are tied to creative flow. And you have a desire or even no desire, and you're just able to like walk down the street if you've been there a million times, and just like what would it look like if you had never seen it before? What would you notice? What would your mind get drawn to? And often when we travel, I feel like this happens automatically when we're in new environments and we see things. Our senses are alive, we're in tuned with how does the sun look different, what is the sky, what are the buildings, and you take in the whole space in a different way. I work very visually, like I work on sensing and visualization, like visualness and sensations of my body are kind of my superpowers. Other people have words, other people have different types of creative flow, but those are my senses that are enlivened and allow me to touch with like my inner knowing, etc. And I think being in places that, and I think it starts with intention, and then putting yourself in situations that allow for that flow, for that, instead of fighting with something, allowing to notice what you're noticing and following whatever intention you have, following what then comes up in your field, in your awareness after that intention, and paying attention to that feeling of aliveness or expansion, or almost like little bubbles in your system, as opposed to the shutting down, compression, heaviness feeling. Usually if you're falling into that, the creativity isn't flowing. There's something else you can do with it, but it's and sometimes people's thing or writing, how that bubbly feeling comes, um, is, forever open to everyone's unique gifts, really.
Oh, I just love that. And do you have advice for people who are looking for their unique gifts and looking to find that?
Um, I think um, I think people sometimes look too hard. I think what you're naturally inclined to and love that you kind of take for granted is usually where this lives. I can give an example of this if you'd like, which
Oh, please do. Please
yeah.
do.
So I had one of my best friends, she was in grad school and she had to do a poll of, her ask do a survey of all her friends of like what is her hard areas and what are her attributes, where does like what are her gifts to the world, and where could she get feedback for being a better business leader, etc. And so I ended up, I was living with her at the time, this is during COVID, and I went through all her responses and helped her to create notes because she had to write a paper about it. And, people would just say over and over again how much of a people person she was, they made people feel so comfortable, like all of these good things. And then also highlighting her negative points, which is she can be quite stubborn and different things of that sort. And it was interesting watching her responses because all of the good things, she was just kind of like, yeah, like not that big a deal, of people saying that like they made her feel super comfortable, that she's one of her best friends, like all of these different things. And at one point I stopped her because like all of the good things were not going in. She didn't view them as being anything special because they were just who she was, very, very much so. Like she naturally has a very will bring people out of their shell. She is very just loving of community, of connection, of all of these different attributes. And people were showing this to her essentially as like a superpower she has. And she was just like being like, that's not important. But like, really, that's where her genius lies. That's where her creativity is. And it's like, how do you allow what people actually show you to infiltrate like you for your passion, that thing that doesn't seem like any work for you, like that is where your creativity just like will flourish.
Oh gosh, I love it. Now tell me, what inspires you and brings you joy?
um what inspires me and brings me joy? I mean, life, like having really good conversations like this with people, having like meeting people and being able to go really deep. I love the work that I do, really brings me joy. Like I love taking on spaces, and it's not necessarily the space so much as the relationship and giving the person I'm working with, my client, like more spacious, like more spaciousness, more aliveness in the world, and making them feel like they matter. Like even the person that I was just talking about, my best friend, and like relaying this to her, like I was telling her like pay attention to this, and like as I was telling her to like actually see this, like I think I was even crying at the time because I'm just like, you're like, it's just so much beauty is being expressed right now, and sometimes we don't often see it. And so any way that I can allow that beauty to be expressed or be amplified, that like brings me the greatest joy. And that's tied with like also really simple pleasures of swimming in the ocean, really experiencing the elements, and having fun. It brings me lots of joy in like whatever way that is.
Oh gosh, I love it. I know swimming in the ocean is just such a beautiful way to experience that and just like feel that childlike rush.
And food brings me a lot of joy as well. I'm definitely a foodie, and yeah, just different experiences of the senses and all the different forms, I feel like um are amazing.
Oh, fabulous. Do you have one favorite one that you go back to again and again? Or maybe something on your travels that you hold on to?
In like what regard?
Oh, just like an experience, like sometimes when I'm wanting to get a mood for writing or whatever I'm doing, I'll tap into that experience. Just wondering, is there like a sunset in Marrakesh or, you know, something like
Yeah.
that?
Let's see, what do we pull from? There's like warm rain. like hot, warm rain. I'll
Mm,
sometimes pull on it.
mhm.
There's also an experience I sail. I've sailed in the past. I really love sailing. And I was told this story the other day when someone asked me, we were connecting about sailing, and I was sailing up the Baja Peninsula in Mexico, and it was the middle of the night, and just like the moon and the stillness. It was like two in the morning or something, and my co sailor was asleep, and I was just tending the boat all by myself, and it was just so still, and I ended up like writing a poem about it, being like I fell in love with sailing by moonlight. And it was just, being in tune with the water slapping the hull and the wave just like slowly steering the boat and getting that best full sail, and just the moon on the water. It was just so peaceful, and you're in your element, and essentially you're in flow. And I remember even at that time having all of this and just really appreciating like the fullness of sensation of the experience. And then a whale ends up like just kind of coming up gently, like maybe
Mm.
20, 30 feet away. And just this like aliveness and like smoothness, but you're in the rhythm with the elements, you're in the rhythm of yourself. And yeah, and so that is definitely experience. I've kind of termed one of the energetics that I work with is what I call pure heart, true love, and tapping into the essence of this. And just like these visceral feelings is actually something that I incorporate within my work when I do home and soul refresh sessions with people. And this frequency, this sense of oneness, of belonging, of expansion and connection is the work that I really do.
Oh, goodness. I just love this so much. I feel like we could talk for days. I'm definitely going to have you on again when your book comes out and we can hear more of these delicious travel experiences that it sounds like creative flow in a teacup. I just love it, except so much bigger and more massive as every element is just so beautiful. The whale, I just want to drift along in that memory myself. But I'd love to ask you, what is your favorite advice for creative people, and what would you like listeners to take away from today?
One thing that I'm working with currently is just like maintaining like my own clear energy field. I feel like so much time we get on Facebook, on all of these different things, there's so many ways to do anything, and we end up losing our own like our own energy center of what will work for us. And so spending those like few moments, I loved your idea of like, what is this memory, what do you call upon for creative flow, or aligning your energetic vibration for like who you're wanting to be, how you're wanting to show up. And I think that is such a powerful tool to um move out of what actually lights you on fire, what like being both in that um duality of somewhat like surrender and like own sense of self, um with like action. What I'd like people to, what was your question exactly?
Oh, what you'd like them to take away. And
um yeah,
oh,
just
I feel like you answered that really well, but
yeah.
anything that comes to mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think just really feeling yourself and like feeling who you are and like following your own passions. I can't, I think that is all anyone can really do to make the world a better place,
Mhm.
and like not getting bogged down by the media, the turmoil that's in the world that's prevalent right now, and really feeling, allowing, if there's pain, allowing that to fuel your expression instead of bog you down with needing to do X, Y, and Z.
Well, it's so right. We've got to be the light. What can we do but be the light where we are. And to have to do that, you just have to fill your cup, and you have to have a space that replenishes you and energizes you. And for listeners who would love to get in touch with you and find out how to do that, can you tell us where they can find you and how you can work together?
Yeah. You can find me on all the normal places, LinkedIn, link, Facebook, Instagram. My website is www.nalasa.design. So you can read more about me there. I offer home and soul refresh sessions for personal people that want to transform their relationship with their space. They're personal sessions that really is almost like a design and energy deep dive. I offer, yeah, it's a really beautiful package of both talking about your space, your relationship with your space, and I take people on what I call an AVM, or an activation visualization meditation, that really kind of lightly cleanses your home, as well as just really pulls in your passion, your energy, where you are right now. And that's good for anyone that is in a place temporarily, or it's their dream home and wanting to figure out how to make it feel more vibrant, more alive for them. I also offer dowsing, and I work with people, anyone that's hosting a retreat. I hold energetic spaces and really help with the inner workings, your personal confidant, to help you put inspiring retreats on too. So those are the 3 different ways that people can work with me, and happy to have a conversation with anyone that feels so inclined as well.
Oh, how fabulous. Well, thank you so, so much, Nalasa, for coming and chatting with me today on Sew and Flow. And I'm just wishing you the most beautiful journey, that every bit of life just feels like that you're sailing on that boat with that whale. I think can all go away with that. Wish that for every listener here as well. And I hope you all tune in next week for our next episode of the Sew and Flow podcast. Did this episode resonate with you? If your heart feels that pain of being rejected, and you would love to heal the rejection wound and feel accepted, celebrated, and belonging, join Beloved, a 3-week experience to heal the rejection wound forever. It includes a live workshop and group gatherings, a pop-up Facebook group, and a pre-recorded rapid transformational therapy session and subconscious transformation meditation to recode your neural pathways to feel the love surrounding you. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for sharing your time and your energy, and for sharing your creativity with the world. I would love to give you an invitation to create the magic of flow in your life and work, because I know that the world is a better place when you create the visions on your heart. If you would love to focus and become immersed in creative flow, no matter what else is going on in your life, then hop on my website, sewandflowwithmollymurray.com, and download 15 minutes to focus and flow for free. If you would love inspiration on your creative journey, join the Sew and Flow book club through my email list. Join us each month to explore creativity and spirituality. If you would love community and accountability on your creative journey, I would love to invite you to join the Luminaries Creative Collective, a community where you can take part in lush, inspiring creative gatherings. If you would love to become a thriving creative, I invite you to apply to become a luminary through the Luminaries Creative Collective course for thriving creatives. Experience the magic of flow in every part of your life. If you would love support along any step of your creative journey, then reach out to me about my lush one-on-one creative mentorship packages. This podcast is produced in collaboration with Seahorse Bookstore, the independent bookstore committed to awakening the imagination. Order your books and stream your audiobooks through Seahorse. I am so excited for you to create the impact you deserve and to truly thrive as a creative. Together, we are changing the world in wonderful ways. If this discussion piqued your interest, I hope you stay tuned for the next episode.